Welcome to yet another episode of Shortcast Over Coffee. Today, my guest is Sameer Shisodia, CEO of the Rainmatter Foundation, a philanthropy and ecosystem building initiative by Zerodha that is shaping how India approaches climate action, livelihoods, and environmental regeneration. In this episode, we will talk to Sameer about practical, actionable insights that are crucial today and how they can help move the needle toward a more sustainable future. So, without further ado, let's get into the episode. Um, Hi, Sameer. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, morning, Bala.
Mhm.
Glad to be here.
And thanks for taking out the time to talk to me. I just want to structure this podcast in two parts. One is maybe focus a little bit about you as a person and what got you into this space, and then talk about rain matter and how we can address some of the uh, pertinent challenges that we see coming
Sure.
up in the next couple of decades or so. So I see that, you were heading product at a company, and then you moved on to become a chief farming officer. I'm seeing that title for the first time. Um, so someone who was an engineer,
Yeah.
headed products and shipped products. What got you suddenly into this? And I'm pretty sure it was not sudden. So I would love to know a bit about that journey.
Yeah, sure. So, even through my tech career, each subsequent iteration was a chase for chase of a bigger impact. I mean, I started asking the question of what's happening with my work. There were obviously like the tech scene in Bangalore was great in the mid 90s to know, to now. Um, and we were all riding the wave. So in terms of what it meant for us, I mean, when we were getting out of college in the mid 90s, job security was a major thing, much bigger than what it's today for a lot of kids. But then we started hitting those imagined goals much quicker than we ever thought we would. And then the questions around what is happening with your work. Yes, you have the patents, you have career growth, you have financial success and all of that. But what's really happening with the work you're doing? You know, if you are familiar with Linux, all my work essentially went to DevNull. You know, it was a little um, tough to come face to face with this fact that all my amazing work, the first company I worked with, like for some amazing operating systems work, massively parallel systems, kernel work, like right out of college. I was doing all this. That got bought out and shut down, and then a variety of different things. So everything I've worked on eventually got acquired or got shut down, or it doesn't run anymore. And there was some very cool stuff. From an engineer's point of view, this was really, really cool stuff. So each subsequent iteration was okay. Yahoo was, hey, you know what? We're actually working on the web. You get instant feedback. A lot of consumers use it, and you actually have a more direct connect. So it felt a little more real, but then eventually got to more questions. It didn't feel real enough.
Right.
Uh,
I think
yeah,
that's one of the things that every engineer faces is that, you're working really hard till a business decision changes things altogether, right? Maybe it's not profitable enough. Maybe there is a change in leadership, and that's it. So,
yeah. So I decided to do a business myself, like a startup, and you're closer to the consumer. You're actually making those decisions. But then you know, eventually I realized that maybe tech is not the answer. Maybe the real world is out there. So as I was getting out of my startup, I was already not suitable for work because you see a breadth of things, and then a job description is too narrow. So I didn't go back to a formal career post that. I was helping friends with product management, but I was also doing this thing at my farm on the side. Linger started because at the farm, friends started coming and started staying over at the place. So it almost happened organically. Uh,
interesting.
got, got more interested in food systems, started as one spent more time in non-urban, non-tier one India. Um, you come face to face with a lot of realities. There's a lot of unlearning and relearning and rewiring of the head that started happening, and these questions actually started growing bigger. So over time, the tech, even my product management involvement in French startups and all of that kept reducing. This kept happening more and more, and then farming collective happened, and you know questions around what's happening in the villages, what is the shape size of our economy, why are our cities like this. So I started writing a lot, and then Rainmatter happened, a complete accident.
How did that happen?
So I run these little hospitality places as part of Linga. Um, it's a long-standing hobby project that has been viable. I've not treated it like a startup. I've never raised funding for it, unlike my previous startup, because there's principles involved, and you can't have principles in startups, right? Um, So one of the campsites was being shut down, and we heard that somebody was acquiring it. Turned out it was the Zerodha guys. We got talking in some context, and they said, "Hey, we wanted to do this. We've read your blogs. Do you want to do this?" So we had a few conversations, and long story short, it got kicked off through that. Complete accident. I mean, I wasn't planning to go back to anything that looked like a formal job in life. Yeah.
Mm. And coming to Rainmatter, there are so many venture capital funds that are primarily focused on renewable energy, climate change, etc. But
Mhm.
is there something specific that you want to talk about that makes Rainmatter different compared to a lot of
Yeah, so
these?
right off the bat, I mean, I think there's a lot of confusion around the name. There's Rainmatter Capital, there's Rainmatter Foundation. There's a focus on the financial bits, the uh, fintech part of it. There's focus on the health part of it. I actually manage the foundation, which is um, front and center, focused on climate as a problem. So we advise on the investments where we see a play on impact, or we sometimes recommend that as well. So we work very closely with the capital team as well. But our direct remit is really the grant making and working with the CSO sector, with think tanks who are working with government, people who are doing research in this space, and so on and so forth. So yeah.
Interesting. So, I mean, just for the viewers, like, what is the difference between like investment and grant? Like, is grant, I mean, a lot of people have this notion that grant is basically free money where you can just go on and do whatever you would like. So, do you want to just break that down for the audience a bit?
Actually, it goes back to the difference between a for-profit and a non-profit, right? Um, you are willing to pay for the headphones you're wearing, right? Right now, we don't have mechanisms for you to pay for cleaner air, unless very indirectly through taxes. If there's somebody working on problem solving, which helps with cleaner air, or better soil, or better water, or better commons, and all the things you critically depend on. Our economy doesn't recognize that. We have no mechanisms to pay for that, right? So we invent new mechanisms to do that. One is, of course, public funding and taxation, but that goes with proven solutions. It can't be cutting edge. It's like the startup world versus the enterprise world, right? There's a lot of new stuff happening. There's a lot of rewiring to be done, acceptability, go to market, all of those things apply. But in a space where there is no individual direct benefit necessarily, and somebody's got to work for it. Those are non-profits, and they need grants. So it's as straightforward as that.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Do you see a change in mindset where people are ready to pay a corporation that, you know, makes things better? And by better, I mean not convenience, but, has an impact with respect to climate. And I can give you an example. Like, for example, like now Amazon has this thing where, at least in the US, where you once you order something, you can be like, do I need it the same day or within 2 days?
Yeah,
And it shows that within 2 days, it has X amount of carbon reduction and so on, right?
yeah, yeah,
So I most of the time I do that. I'm like, I'm willing to sacrifice 2 days
yeah.
to get my product much later.
Yeah.
by having a less impact. So that's one. And the second thing that I can think of is I had this conversation with a great startup that makes air purifiers called Pran. Their um, you know they their products are extremely expensive but of top quality. And now the thing is, like, are people willing to pay or go that extra
Yeah. Yeah.
to get those, right? Do you see a change in mindset?
So the first one is really public comments. You are willing to do a little bit at the edge of it when the inconvenience to you is not large, etc., to fund the public commons. And you are seeing some instances of that behavior showing up. I mean, it's becoming a little bit of a conversation. The second one is a private benefit. I would say most such private solutions, the net math and the net energy doesn't really work out.
Mm,
Like if you account for material, if you account for the product life cycle, and so on and so forth, you are usually better off solving it in the commons. Um, it's hyperbolic, but a better V solution leads to good outcomes for all the I's. A better I solution usually does it the other way around. So there's a difference between the two, but we are seeing, at least in a limited way, a desire and an ability to do this, to pay for the commons. I think also as we start to understand the correlation between the health of the V spaces and the commons and the health of the I space. I mean, if you're in Bangalore and if you want to go for a 5 kilometer walk, it's pretty much impossible. You, your kids, your pets have to basically do the um, you know, circular uh, perambulations around your apartment or in your gated complex. And how much are you going to be able to do? Your kids and your dogs both need to run 3 kilometers at a time. But there are no trails, there are no spaces like that. It's the same thing with cycling. I've been cycling in the city over the last couple of years. It's proving impossible to do that now, especially our part of town with a lot of metro work and all of that. That obviously tells on my own health, but it tells on the city's health because each time I make the trade-off between a cycle and a two-wheeler or a cab or a car or whatever. I am actually creating harm in the commons, right? And I'm doing that all the time now because we didn't invest in the V spaces, right? So as we see the correlation between um, these these commons, our V decisions and our I decisions. And I think Delhi is starting to ask those questions. Our cities are starting to ask the questions around quality of life versus just your standard of living, for instance. As you starting to see research around walkability in a city and diabetes, which is also a health cost. 16 to 20% of India's GDP by 2040 something is going to be from healthcare. That's a very scary statistic. If a fifth of what we are spending is going on healthcare, it tells you a lot of stories. So it's the V is becoming the I. For a bit, because it was on a complex systems map, you couldn't see the interconnections. It was 3 degrees in, but now I think it's becoming obvious. So as that happens, I think we will find a way to agree to pay for this, agree to act together on this a little more.
mm.
Hopefully. Yeah.
One of the things that really surprises me is that uh, like electric biking or cycling has not taken off in India, which is because most of the cities, from what I notice, are pretty flat, and something like a 20 mile per hour, which is like, let's say, what, 28 kilometer per hour max speed electric bikes that can cover, I don't know, 60 to 70
Quite
uh,
easily.
quite
Yeah.
easily kilometers. Because every time when I ride a two-wheeler in India, I see that the average speed is around 19 to 25, right?
But then
And
you're lucky. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, not in Bangalore, but
Yeah. Yeah.
in Calicut at least.
Yeah.
So it's such a sweet spot where you can actually cover,
Yeah.
and most of the Indian commute is, because I mean, unlike the US, Indians have to
Yeah.
drive much shorter distances, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you can cover 8 to 10 kilometers, the speed in which a scooter can get you there, a car can get you there, versus an electric bicycle,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
doesn't even need a license,
absolutely.
it's pretty much the same.
Yes.
That minor added health benefit.
Lower capex as well.
Far lower capex. I mean, you spend 1 lakh rupees on an Ather or an Ola, and
Yeah.
you can get something for 30,000 rupees.
And then much lower load on your road systems.
I mean, the form factor is so much smaller,
Absolutely.
right? And there are cargo electric bikes that have taken off like crazy in.
Plus you save a lot of on your health eventually.
Yeah, exactly. And what is so surprising is countries like Denmark and Netherlands have far worse weather than India.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this has taken off. Is there like a like that attitude that, I don't know, like bicycling or biking is sort of inferior compared to a two-wheeler? I mean, I see that kind of an attitude in Kerala
I
for
think
sure.
there's
I don't.
a little bit of a challenge to it, and Bangalore's bicycling community is actually stronger than most places. But yes, by and large, I think socially, that's the story,
Hmm.
right? Because our progression was towards, I mean, especially my generation, and I'm putting a little distance between you and I right now. I'm turning 52 in Jan. Um, my generation is what I call the house plus one and the car plus one generation, right? We could never get out of that loop by and large. And we don't have any other imagination of what life means outside of this. So we are always on to our next car and our next house. And it's a pretty terrible way to live life, to be honest. I mean, life is more interesting than this. Right. So obviously, like the car actually figured in this, even the form factor of the house, the car's also getting bigger, the houses are getting bigger and more energy intensive and so on, so more material intensive and so on and so forth. Right. So in that milieu, that also sets the aspiration for everybody else. Right. So the natural progression was seen from taking public transport to having your own little moped or scooter and then to a car and then a bigger car and then some of the electric cars today have a much huger footprint than your average Maruti 800.
Hmm.
Just the brake dust from those things is crazy. It's not just tailpipe emissions. It's materials. It's the brake dust. It's the tire dust. Tire dust is a huge pollutant. Right? So we've kind of locked into that story. And the thing with convenience is it's very difficult to see it any other way. And I talk about this very often, even in the context of parenting. The difference between nice and good is not always evident to people.
Can you expand on that a bit?
I mean, your kids ask you for, I don't know, ice cream, and you can give it to them. It's not good for them.
Okay, but you're being nice to them. Okay.
You're being nice to them. And I think we do that to ourselves, to our kids, to our populations as administrators and governments, to each other, right? We are very often nice and not good, right? It's the walking thing. Walking is really good for you. It doesn't always feel nice. It just feels easier to go down to your basement, not deal with the world, go in a car, apparently cocooned in that, although you're stuck in traffic. Um, but I think we have to change the story. The story of our times has actually moved to this idea of convenience. We're ready to sacrifice everything, including our kids, at its altar, right? I mean, that effectively Delhi's done that. Effectively, Bangalore's in that direction already. We're trading our kids' lives for this perception of convenience.
Yeah, and I've heard you say a lot that, I want to apologize for the forthcoming generation. Uh, I mean, that is so true. I mean, think about, 20 years from now, like, how do you really think our cities would change? Like anything significant that you think would degrade the cities the way they are?
So one is, of course, the biophysical reality of climate. Um, I think we are under 20 years from seeing severe impacts. So we were in Kochi and Alapi for a bit, and we were walking around with a few partners and people on the ground, and we asked this question: where do you see yourself in 15, 20 years from now? Because there's data, there's simulators, there's maps. Um, the right answer is really under 5 feet of water,
Hmm.
but nobody's thinking about it. All the data is there. There are online simulators you can go to
The
play
entire Alleppey 5 feet underwater by in 15
most of
years.
that region actually, at least for a few months a year, right? I mean,
Scary.
it is true. That part of it, half of Bombay, a lot of the Sundarbans and the Bhitarkanika area. These are the parts that are set to, you know, and this is before we accounted for the accelerated sea rise that we now know from a month ago that's happening in Antarctica. We actually have not modeled that in yet. Now we know that's much, much faster than we had previously thought. So now, while we are planning development there, and planning our futures there, and planning apartments there, and infrastructure and metros and this and that, we don't account for reality that's just 15, 20 kilometers away. So there's that biophysical reality. There is the momentum of the past. I mean, most people in decision-making structures are from the 80s or even earlier, right? And we are bringing that baggage to decision-making. Our imaginations and our ideas and our metrics are still stuck there, so we're still behaving like that. I do see a change in younger people. Somebody who's below 30, below 25 is thinking differently. At least, is able to grapple with these questions more honestly, right? And they are the ones who are going to be um, left holding the baby, as it were. So I don't know how this will pan out, but there is both cause for huge pessimism, but some optimism. Right? I'm praying and hoping the younger folks actually manage to find it in themselves to organize differently and do better. And we have cities that are more walkable, more, one is they will have to adapt to this. There are heat action plans, there are climate action plans. The older folks are still figuring out how to do this, how to get this together, because the weight of the past is still not ready to let go. How we run our cities, how we distribute budgets, the parameters on convenience, greed, all of those are not just going away. If we're not able to give in completely to this very urgent need, right?
Yeah.
15 years is very urgent. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, about convenience, I mean, I see these delivery apps under 10 minutes. Like, what are you going to do getting something under 10 minutes? I don't know. Um,
Nobody needs anything. So,
yeah. Uh, and I was talking to this professor from George Washington University once, and he said that, if you're planning to buy a home in the US, please avoid the southeastern states, Florida, the Carolinas, and a few states around, because, like you said, in the next 15, 20 years, it's going to be really bad, and there might be climate migration or climate
but 43 degrees at the border of Canada.
Yeah,
You're seeing the polar vortex coming down periodically. This year it's happening in Europe now, right?
I agree.
Um, all our assumptions of the third world will get hit worse, Florida will get worse, the coast will get. I think I think it's more universal than that.
Yeah.
Europe has already seen 10x and 20x rain events. India is starting to see that now. It was interesting that India got there. India's getting there 3 years later than Europe did. You know?
Yeah, and recently a lot of my friends posted stories on Instagram about how they could see northern lights from their balcony, as far down as California. That's not a great thing. Yeah. Uh, okay, so moving on, I think whenever people talk about climate change, they are too focused on renewable energy, carbon capture. But what are some of the things that about climate change that goes under the radar, and your work at Rainmatter has really opened your eyes about? I mean, I know you work very deeply with agriculture, so I can assume that that is one of it. But anything else?
It's everything. Like I think the UN Secretary General once said it's everything, everywhere, all at once.
Hmm.
So as we started asking this question around where are you using your energy, where are you using this transport that you're trying to change, we got to some very deep macro systemic inefficiencies. I mean, if places like the northeast of India are buying 75% of their pork from UP and Andhra Pradesh, right? Do you want to switch the transportation with EVs, or do you want to get them to, you know, rear it
Localized. Yeah.
locally, right? There were 700 different kinds of brooms across India. That means broom grasses, palm leaves, that represents biodiversity. Yeah, and that represents your knowledge systems and your linkage with biodiversity and your production systems. Now, whether you do it at an individualized level at home or whether you collectivize and do it as a little production unit, etc., all those are variables you can play with. But it's absurd to have only Meghalaya grow all the broom grass that everybody's using, pack it in plastic handles with plastic packaging, transported thousands of kilometers to every end of the country. And that's what we're doing. It's a rare village that actually consumes vegetables grown in the village. We are now a 70% net importer of edible oil in this country. So mustard growing regions are actually buying mustard oil from something that's coming from 4 states away. It's an absurd economy. It's basically like a diesel economy that then needs highways, that needs more logistics, more packaging, more everything else. I mean, why will you not have climate change? Interestingly, because of this economy, 99% of your landscape, right? Most villages in India actually have an economic red line as well. And they have a health red line. And their assets have depleted. And the gap between their income and their expense is about, it's X and 5X. And we did some studies in some cases, right? Um, this math is not adding up for most people. It's not adding up for the planet. Why are we playing this game? It's an absurd game to play, right? It's not even working out at the macro level. If our um, if we have an edible oil fragility, if we have a pulses fragility, if you're buying our crude oil, everything you need, you have a dependency and fragility. What exactly are you achieving from this? So can you trust your land again? Can you trust your place again? Today, that trust is broken. Nobody actually believes that people in Kozhikode do not actually trust that their answers can come from Kozhikode. They go to Bangalore, they go to the Gulf, they go to the US, the guy in the US wants to go to Mars. Everybody's trying to go elsewhere. But the answer is here. The entire planet has to start believing in here and figuring out how to live here. And that is broken today. We don't actually think of our production systems, our needs, our water resources, our energy resources coming from here. We always believe that, somewhere else. As a result, we have weakened all our places on all dimensions. And we are making bad trade-offs. When we are trying to push for some cash crops, we are taking a huge hit on our assets. I mean, you would not tolerate a wealth advisor who converted a 1,000 rupee FD into a 300 rupee income on a continuous basis. That's what we're doing. We're converting our assets in soil, in air, in water, and in our knowledge systems, in our social institutions that were managing all this. We're breaking those down and converting it into a very, very poor form of income at scale. So this ownership of your place and a better understanding of your place, and then get to action. I mean, there's a tendency to rush into action right now. Right? We're trying to, but without understanding. If you start exercising without understanding your body, without understanding what you need out of it, etc., you can cause yourself a lot of harm.
Yeah, but to a farmer in Punjab or Haryana who is earning a lot of money due to minimum support price, cultivating a cash crop, uh, a lot of these people, they just go with what makes financial sense. Like if this
But
is
the average debt in Punjab is 2 lakhs.
Hmm.
You just saw what happened. They're so fragile and so dependent on the government each time something like this happens. The average debt in MP is 1.5 lakhs. Right? The numbers are not visible right now. The number of invisible problems in these states is almost directly correlated with the drug problem in Punjab. And by the way, that problem exists in Rajasthan, it exists in Himachal, it's starting to show up in Coorg,
Kerala as well. Yeah.
in Kerala, right? These systemic weaknesses actually show up in these symptoms. So it's these are not disjoint problems. So we started putting things on a systems map and seeing how they're interlinked,
Mm,
right? So the farmer in Punjab needs to understand in a language that they can deal with, that that's expressed in their language. And I don't mean Punjabi. I mean in terms they understand, in lived realities they understand and care about. And when they start to see that, like if when we do this in a village, saying, in Kolar, an average panchayat is spending 2.7 crores just buying poultry, chicken and eggs. That's broiler poultry with antibiotics. It's coming on the back of a truck, so it's diesel being burnt. It's lost opportunity in chicken poop, which would be great for your soil. And they understand the health impacts from this, right? And it's 2.7 crores. What the hell are you guys doing? So just that understanding, and we don't have to actually suggest solutions. Then they ask for, hey, you know what, we want to do backyard poultry, or how do we solve this, or whether it's in this or in water or in mustard oil production systems or whatever. The triggers are in an understanding of your place. So I think that collective space, that understanding of your cluster, of your V spaces, I think that's gone missing. We've become too individual. We're a villager, not a village anymore. We are a city dweller, not a city anymore. So
mm. One thing that comes up a lot in the conversation surrounding climate is like we have one earth that feeds all of us, right? So a lot of the times the industrialized world gets gets told that, hey, you guys have burnt so much fuel and you have caused global warming and now you are stopping us from developing. Uh, like India makes that argument sometimes. Like you guys have gotten all rich and economically forward, but now we
let
are
us do
just
that too.
yeah. I mean, it's a
But
very
that's absurd,
difficult
yeah.
question to answer, right? I mean,
No,
in a
it's not.
way,
No,
in
it's not. To me, it betrays a complete lack of imagination and complete lack of belief in your land.
hmm,
You're saying the only way I know, the
is to
only
burn coal.
path, the only path I trust right now is the path you took, that I know is destructive and is killing my own people.
Yeah,
Provably so, right? That's an absurd argument to make, really. Yes, there's reparations, there's an acknowledgement of one's problems, and all of that is true. And that negotiation should be had. But to use this to fight for space for my share of destruction is absurd.
that's a great way to put it. Like you destroyed 30%, I have the right to destroy 15% more, right?
That's
That's
absurd. That's terrible. That's terrible form.
yeah. And that also like sort of undermines us as a human race. Like, what did we even learn from the
Yeah.
mistakes that others have made, right?
And we are a tropical country. We are India. We have always, um, I don't mean to sound racist, but for historical reasons, Northern Europe was a certain place. It evolved probably when the ice was shrinking. Nature was not an ally. But here in this country, nature has always been an ally. We've grown up with it historically. We know how to deal with it. We know how to live in the forest. We know how to, we have memories and traditions of managing conflict, of managing forest systems, and so on and so forth. We can do this better. We can create this new way of living with the planet that neither the West nor China actually figured out, right? And we can lead the world on this. We don't have to mimic what they've done. Can we be smarter about this?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there are better ways to solve the same problem, right? I mean, yeah, yeah. Okay, so we spoke a lot about impacts that India will face in the future. But when I talk to people about climate change, they they tell me that hey, there is a lot of chatter about climate change and where are the actions, So I want you to, enlighten all of us about the actionable steps that Rainmatter or the companies that or the grants that Rainmatter has given out done in this regard, and that would probably inspire some entrepreneur somewhere to take this up, because the usual notion is that, yeah, it's a science project, it's good to solve like a small community problem, or focus on a city, but you can't just make money out of it. Might as well just start a next SaaS business.
I think the economy will rewire when before we are done with this. And we are investing in some of that as well. I think economics today is broken. We do not account for these costs. We are borrowing from this bank and we don't pay it back. As flat as that, right? As direct as that. We have to account for natural capital. We have to account for this stock that we're dipping into, and we have to learn to live with the flow. In the water cycle, there was a flow, and then we started to hit stock. And so you have water insecurity. All your mining represents stock. So the more you can do with biology, which is regenerative, the better you are. If you can build out of bamboo versus out of, I don't know, rock of variety of kinds, you're doing better already. So as simple as that. Are you dipping into stock or are you working with flow? And flow creates limits. Of course, the limits can be expanded a lot with your understanding of the flow, which is what we had done in our villages, right? We knew each reed, we knew each plant, we knew each part of the forest, and we could fit into it while making use of it in a quote unquote sustainable way. I mean, actually, this idea of sustainable is very interesting. I keep saying it's understood only in its negative. If you have a certain amount in the bank and you keep dipping into it, eventually it runs out unless you replenish it. So essentially, it's unsustainable to keep dipping into it. So when you're saying civilization or certain behaviors are unsustainable, it's pointing to the fact that it will run out. You will run out of soil, you will run out of water, you will run out of resources, you will run out of space to do a certain set of things. In Delhi, you are running out of breathable air. How serious is that? Right? It's unsustainable is the only way to understand sustainability. Right? People are not getting there. In terms of actions, this is all really coming from there is no free lunch, right? Like at your home, you're managing the electricity, you're managing finances, leisure, education, healthcare. You're managing all of this and you're continuously making trade-offs. Every decision from the time you get up in the morning to the time you sleep, professionally, personally, in the market, as a family, as a group of people doing anything else, right? You are actually making trade-offs. Today, a lot of trade-offs are invisible to us. Like the air is everybody's favorite dustbin, right? Now it's very easy to imagine that you can improve almost every trade-off by 5%. All of COVID, where I don't know, Punjab started seeing Canada from there or whatever, the wild animals appeared, was effectively just a 5% reduction in emissions and just emissions.
We saw it and we still didn't learn from it.
Yeah. So now if you imagine that in every trade-off that you make, you can do a 5% improvement in the number of lights that are on in your room, in the setting of the air conditioners, and in your use of your vehicles, right? In how much you buy and in how much you consume, and whatever, right? You can do 5% very, very easily without thinking of it. If a lot of corporations are trying to do sustainable stuff, but if they back off their growth targets by even 5%, we are in a huge place. And that thinking of what trade-off can I influence today, this morning, now, right? And this whole debate about the individual versus the corporation versus the government, etc., it's very absurd. I mean, finally, we're all individuals. You could be the PM of a country, the head of a corporation, the head of the UN, running an RWA, running a village panchayat, running a business, whatever. You're still making a decision as an individual, maybe as part of a group, but as an individual. And if you're alive to this situation, if you understand this idea of a trade-off, you can do better. So towards this now, how we are organizing ourselves and funding partners and trying to look at the ecosystem is one is you need ownership because like you own your house, who owns your village, who owns Calicut, who owns Bangalore, who owns Panchayat, and so who owns the country across all parameters and who's actually making better trade-offs, who's responsible for even considering trade-offs. So that's one part of it. How do you get to better ownership? How do you get to better understanding in this ownership? Because as an owner of your house, if you don't understand, let's say, what bad quality paint does to your health, you will not make good choices. If you don't understand healthcare well, you will go to a quack and so on and so forth. So where's your knowledge systems and your understanding of this? Do you know how your water situation is related to the flora around you? What trees are great, what water pumps and so on and so forth. And then the third is, do you have access to the tools and the services that you need around? And I think entrepreneurs can play in both the knowledge piece as well as this piece. In fact, in some experiments, we've seen local entrepreneurs actually lead on this more than civil society and governments because they are solving the commons problems, but there are a lot of individual trade-offs to be made as well. Right. So I think there's a huge space to play there. And this is how we're trying to organize it. For profit, non-profit, like I said, is a function of whether there is a larger private benefit or a larger commons benefit from it. It's just a function of that. In fact, if you're a problem solver, honestly, the real tough problems are in the common spaces, right? In the complex systems dynamic spaces. Private entrepreneurship is not the tough problems, honestly. Anything that money can solve is largely solved. You know, a little bit of technology for tweaks here and tweaks there. But the real complex problems, the real um, systems problems are in the common spaces. So, so yeah, I think everybody can participate.
Hmm. So if someone does want to participate and come in touch with Rainmatter, what should he or she do?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out through our website. Um, but honestly, I mean, Rainmatter is just one
Yeah,
entity
yeah.
in space. There are a gazillion partners. There's government starting to think about the transition. There's a lot of entrepreneurs. There's a lot of funders organizing to do it. So of course, sometimes it's an opportunity first and a problem second. We are trying to push for that idea that let's make it a problem first and an opportunity second because we don't have that much time. So let's push hard on it. But yeah, I think we need all hands on deck at this point. I don't think anybody can consider themselves. It's not that small group solving climate change. You're like I say, you are always part of the climate change problem, either on the cause side or on the solution side, or both. So that 5% trade-off is easily within your grasp as an individual, as an entrepreneur, as an administrator. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I saw videos of, I mean, there was this movement. I don't know if it still exists, but there was this challenge where people would go like 15 to 30 days producing zero waste. It was like a zero waste challenge. I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago. And the surprising part is when they put their minds to it, they could actually achieve such minimal waste. Like they were yeah. So I mean, to your point about 5%, it's definitely doable. It's just, just don't buy extravagantly or
It's as simple as being able to see it.
yeah.
Now that I've mentioned this to you, you're going to watch out for it
Right.
as
Yeah.
you do whatever, right? It's as simple as that. And
Yeah.
you won't do it for everything, and everybody will do it for different things, and that's all right. We don't have to get to the 100% on everything right away.
Hmm.
But we have to start. If 8 billion people start, I think we'll start to make progress.
Mm. But because you say 15, 20 years, right? So a kid today in school, they'll
Mhm.
be like a very full-grown adult by the time this
Yeah.
change happens. So do you think we are doing enough to uh, make aware of climate change at a grassroots level? And by that, I mean schools, like let's say from primary school. Is there like a subject on climate change or is like lessons on climate change? I'm pretty distant from the education system right now, but like,
It
you,
is going mainstream, but in a little bit of what you said earlier, right? Like it's a separate silo from life. So what you do for life, what you do for a living, what you do professionally is still not seen as part of it. See, you can't the assumption of the entire planet today, especially the West, is that we will continue to do what we've been doing for the last few centuries. Solve this on the side, and that'll allow us to continue doing that. That's a broken assumption. This is this is a very serious shift that civilization has not seen in 15,000 years. This is challenging a lot of our assumptions and beliefs of the last 15,000 years of civilization. Um, we have to be able to question, like I said, the fundamentals of economics are not going to be supported by the biophysical reality of the planet.
So if someone asks if, I mean, I've heard Nitin say once that, the next trillionaire is going to be someone who solves climate change. I've just heard him say out in a podcast.
Yeah,
So
I- it's an opportunity for sure
yeah,
but
but if someone asks like, is there money to be made? Is there big bucks to be made? The answer is probably no, right? I mean,
I don't know.
mm,
Maybe there are, but I
mm,
don't know what money means.
that's
You know,
yeah.
so maybe the forms of money. I keep asking this question: what happens one day when you get up and nobody wants to sell you anything?
Mm.
What does money mean to you then? Because we've already come to that position where states, countries, entire countries have actually clamped down on exports of some commodity or the other because of a supply shortfall. The food crisis is building up. England has seen it thrice in the last 5 years. India has seen multiple instances of paddy. Of this year, likely to be a paddy crunch, right? You're seeing this in various commodities again and again and again. So far, there's a little bit of a capacitor in the supply chain that hides it from consumers and so on and so forth. But governments, people in FMCG who do procurement, they're aware of it. This is already happening. The alarm bells are ringing a little bit. You just need 1 year where you have cascaded uh, crop failures across regions and across different crops. And suddenly you will have a serious situation. I think Europe experienced that a little bit. A lot of shelves went dry. Prices are up 80, 120% on a lot of things. They're all, it's interesting that actually Europe is facing this a lot earlier than other parts of the world for some reason. Like it's, it's not yet a third world problem.
Mm.
As contrary to what people said, the third world is going to suffer more because we also have more resilience. We are also a lot more distributed. Most people still have kitchen gardens out there in the village.
I
And
mean, and to be fair, India as a country consumes far less energy, far less
yeah,
resources than
yeah,
the West. So
yeah, exactly,
per
exactly,
capita, yeah.
exactly per capita. I mean, in my farm in Coorg, we had a 17-day power outage recently at the start of the monsoon, right? None of my neighbors noticed. Their lives went on just fine.
Yeah.
Nobody was distraught. I mean, we have a mobile setup, so they use a solar setup, so they used to come charge their mobile phones there, but it didn't really matter to them. Like, life went on. So I think this is starting to play out in very dramatic ways, where people will be forced to see this in the mainstream. Right now, it's a little bit of a thing on the side. So both in terms of actions and in terms of impact, people will be forced to see this in the mainstream. So I think it's there in education, but it's not there in our common imagination.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main reasons is because it's so gradual that the delta shift is so
Is it?
minimal,
Is it?
and these climactic events are maybe
No, it's
like,
invisible. It's not gradual. I mean, I keep saying we are not in the information age. This is the dark ages of information. Our ability to, 2025, for instance, India has had over one disaster every day for all of 2025 on average. Natural disaster.
okay, I need to pause to let that sink in. That's crazy. Yeah.
That's crazy. Right? The scale of this is not small anymore. I mean, if you just take what happened in the Himalayas this year, some of those towns are never going to recover from it. Some of those towns have gotten hit twice, thrice. Towns the size of Mandi, not like tiny towns. Mandi is a sizable city, right? They've gotten hit multiple times. They are not going to recover from a from an infrastructure perspective, from a financial perspective, uh, from a livelihoods perspective. A lot of those people are never going to recover. We know some individual stories, but when you look at the collective picture, it's just horrific, right? The crop failures that are continuously happening. I don't know how Punjab is going to make up for the loss of paddy this year or the loss of the farming soil this year, because the amount of sandy, the silt mixed in soil right now is not going to resolve itself next year. Like, we have no understanding of how to do this. We were in Bitarkanika, and one part of it had 7 rounds of flooding within 2 months. So they replanted paddy and lost it, replanted paddy and lost it, replanted paddy and lost it. Right? And this is not a one-off. And there are these small stories. I mean, we don't, Europe lost, I don't know how many thousand people to the heat wave. Forget India. In India, we don't even know the numbers. The official numbers do not account for so much. And this is just happening at crazy scale right now. It's just that we deal with information bubbles and mythical constructs that almost hide the biophysical world from us. And our ability to understand it is completely gone.
Mm.
But it's not slow.
And on top of all this comes AI and the data centers. I don't know what's going to happen, but yeah.
Yeah, Vishakhapatnam is in for something.
Yeah. And it was funny the way the introduction started for the Visakhapatnam data center was there's this quaint little beautiful town called Visakhapatnam.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, well, thank you, Samir. I know we touched a lot of topics. We could talk about this all day, all long. But thank you so much for your time. Uh, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the audience would notice the alarm bell ringing, and if they have any idea, they would definitely reach out to you or Rainmatter to make some actions in what is already a pretty bad situation.
Yep. And I hope we pull out of this one. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye.
Bala.